Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking something absolutely profound. It's a prophetic source text that asks a really fundamental question about how we're choosing to live our lives right now. The core idea? We desperately need to shift from an exhausted worldly logic to a completely new heavenly operating system. It's basically a deep dive into your spiritual architecture, and I am so pumped to guide you through this material. So let's just jump right in.
So look around. We live in an era of total information overload and just breathless pacing. Do you ever get that feeling like no matter how hard you pedal, the anxiety just keeps snowballing? Well, the source text we're exploring today hits this exact pain point with a really subversive question. What if the exhaustion and the loss of control you're feeling isn't because you aren't trying hard enough? What if the real problem is literally the system you're running on?
The ultimate diagnosis presented here is super striking. It argues that relying on unstable worldly resources, endlessly chasing speed, and putting all our security into our own hustle is causing a massive spiritual and emotional system failure. You are essentially running a buggy old operating system on absolute overdrive, and honestly, it's practically designed to crash. To fix this, we don't just need a minor software patch, we need a complete from the ground up overwrite of our underlying code.
To help us track this whole migration, here is our installation menu for today's explainer. We'll start with the old system bug, look at the ultimate developer guarantee, walk through the 7 kingdom breakthroughs, explore the Ekklesia ecosystem, and finally, initiate your system reboot.
All right, let's initiate Section 1, the old system bug, why we keep crashing.
The source text sets up a really stark contrast for us here. The failing old OS teaches us that to be safe, to win, we've got to rely entirely on worldly resources. The text metaphorically calls these our chariots and horses. Think about your networks, your capital, your background. But here's the catch. Those resources are incredibly fragile. When they shake, our whole inner world collapses. But the new OS, it operates on a completely different foundation. It's driven by God's glory, covenant rest, and heavenly order. It gives you an unshakable foundation even when everything around you is spinning out of control.
Moving right along to Section 2, the ultimate developer guarantee, protection in the shaking.
Our source text anchors this entire system upgrade in a massive, very specific promise from Isaiah chapter 43. Quote, I have called you by name. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overwhelm you. The text frames this not just as, comforting religious poetry, but as the ultimate VIP protection patch for your life. It is literally the highest level security clearance directly from the developer himself.
So the crucial takeaway here is that the developer, God, is not just sitting on a cloud somewhere as a distant spectator while your world shakes. No, he's actively involved. He is calling his people by name right in the middle of the chaos, actively protecting you through the metaphorical fire and water of this massive system migration. And honestly, having that guarantee is exactly what gives us the courage to initiate the upgrade in the first place.
Which brings us to Section 3, the installation process, the 7 kingdom breakthroughs.
Let's look at the first 3 paradigm shifts of our new code. Breakthrough 1 shifts our faith. Instead of building our security on those fragile earthly resources, the chariots and horses, we shift our reliance entirely to God's name. Resources become tools, right? Not our foundation. Breakthrough 2 is about eschatology, or how we view the future. The old code is totally driven by apocalyptic fear and this desperate desire to just escape the earth. But the new code overwrites this with a vision of glorious renewal, a new heaven and new earth. You stop running in a panic and start asking how to partner with that renewal. And Breakthrough 3 shifts us from a performance-based religion, where you're constantly exhausting yourself trying to earn love, to a covenant of love, where you can actually rest, knowing you were chosen and loved first.
Moving on, Breakthrough 4 addresses our fractured identities. The old system creates this split. You're a believer on Sunday, but a totally anxious worker on Monday. The new system integrates you as both a priest, connecting with God, and a king, bringing heavenly order and governance right into your Monday workplace. Breakthrough 5 overwrites the orphan mentality. That exhausting need to constantly prove your worth through comparison. Instead, it gives you the deep assurance of being chosen and sealed. You don't have to beg for the world's approval because you already hold the highest certification. And Breakthrough 6 tackles our modern obsession with speed. The old system just screams hustle faster. The new system says, wait, direction is way more important than speed. If your direction is wrong, accelerating just gets you lost faster. You have to align your compass with the king. And that brings us to the final, really the highest dimensional shift, breakthrough number 7. In the old earthly perspective, your emotions are entirely managed by the daily news, the headlines, environmental panic. Basically, when the headlines shake, you shake. But elevating to the throne perspective, that means looking at the world from the vantage point of a sovereign throne. Seeing that despite the complete chaos on the ground, history's end is secure and God is in absolute control. This perspective is the anchor that truly stabilizes your new operating system.
Next up is Section 4, the Ekklesia ecosystem, connecting to the new network.
The source text emphatically redefines a massive concept here, Ekklesia. It is absolutely not just a passive gathering of people sitting in a building for an hour on the weekend. No, it is a mobilized heavenly ecosystem. It's a dynamic network of those integrated kings and priests we were just talking about, who are specifically called out and then sent into literally every sector of society: business, education, the arts, sent there to bring heavenly order into earthly chaos.
A huge recurring anchor in the text is that God is doing a, quote, new thing. The author stresses that this is not about slapping a shiny new patch onto your broken, anxious life. It is a complete, fundamental system overwrite. It's an invitation to just step entirely out of a failing paradigm and into a highly impactful, kingdom-driven ecosystem.
Finally, we reach Section 5. Initiate your system reboot. Time to make a choice.
The text gets super practical right here, giving us some very clear stop commands. To reboot, you have to consciously force quit the old system. You have to stop relying on those earthly chariots and horses for your safety. Stop viewing the future through a lens of sheer panic and fear. Stop treating love like it's a transaction you have to earn. Stop living the exhausting double life, and end that orphan cycle of constantly having to prove your worth to everyone. Stop running blindly without a compass. And please, stop letting daily headlines hijack your peace. You have to actively close these toxic background apps. Okay, once you've force quit the old, you actually have to launch the new heavenly protocols. Start trusting entirely in the unshakable foundation of God's name. Start anticipating a glorious world renewal. Start resting deeply in your covenant relationship. Start bringing your king and priest identities together into everything you do. Start accepting that you are chosen and you are sealed. Start calibrating your daily direction incredibly carefully. And most importantly, start viewing every single challenge from that unshakable throne perspective. I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought from the source material. The upgrade has been explained, the installation package is downloaded and ready, and the developer guarantees your protection through the fire and the water. As the world around us continues to inevitably shake, the choice is entirely yours. Which operating system are you going to choose to run today? Will you crash with the old, or are you going to rise and operate from the new? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive helps you recalibrate your own life's operating system. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.